I had been a park ranger for many years, and I thought that I had seen everything there was to see in the wilderness. But one day, I encountered something that shook me to my core. It was a beautiful summer day, and I was patrolling one of the more remote trails in the park. As I rounded a bend, I saw a hiker up ahead. He was an older man, with weathered skin and a determined look on his face, but something about him seemed off. As I approached, I called out a greeting. The hiker didn't respond, but I thought that maybe he was hard of hearing or didn't speak English. I tried again, but still no response. I was about to approach him when he suddenly vanished into thin air. It was like he had never been there at all. I was shocked and bewildered. I knew that I had to investigate. I searched the area, but there was no trace of the hiker. I asked other hikers if they had seen him, but no one had. It was like he had just appeared and then disappeared. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. So I did some research and discovered that a hiker had died on that same trail years ago. His name was John, and he had been an avid hiker in his day. He had died of a heart attack on that very spot. I was spooked by this revelation, but I knew that I had to investigate further. So, I decided to spend the night on the trail to see if I could uncover any more information. As the sun began to set, I made camp on a small clearing just off the trail. I built a fire and settled in for the night. I was exhausted from the day's events, but I couldn't sleep. I felt like I was being watched. And then I heard footsteps, soft, shuffling footsteps that sounded like they were coming from the trail. I jumped up and shone my flashlight in the direction of the sound, and there, standing in the glow of my flashlight, was the ghostly hiker. I was frozen in fear as he approached me. He looked just like he had earlier in the day, but now he was translucent, almost like he was made of mist. He didn't say anything, but he beckoned me to follow him. I hesitated, but I knew that I had to see where he was leading me. So, I followed him down the trail. As we walked, I felt like I was in a dream. The trees and rocks around me were hazy and indistinct, and I felt like I was floating. And then, suddenly, we were at the spot where John had died. It was a beautiful spot, with a clear view of the surrounding mountains. But it was also a haunting spot, filled with memories of John's death. The ghostly hiker stood in front of me and pointed to a nearby tree. And there, carved into the bark, was the message, "John was here." I was struck by the simplicity of the message. John had loved this trail and had wanted to leave his mark on it, even in death. And then, the ghostly hiker vanished, just like he had earlier in the day. But this time, I wasn't afraid. I felt like I had been given a gift, a glimpse into the afterlife and the power of memory. I returned to my campsite and slept soundly for the first time in days. The next day I reported my encounter to my superiors, and we decided to mark the spot where John had died with a memorial. It was a small gesture, but it felt like the right thing to do. As time went on, I continued to patrol the trails, but I always kept an eye out for the ghostly hiker. I never saw him again, but I felt like I had a new respect for the wilderness and the spirits that inhabit it. Years passed, and I eventually retired from my job as a park ranger. But I never forgot about the ghostly hiker and the lessons that he had taught me. I often returned to the park as a visitor, and I always made a point to visit the memorial site. One day, as I was walking on a different trail, I heard a familiar sound. It was the sound of shuffling footsteps, just like the ones that I had heard on that fateful night. I turned around and saw the ghostly hiker once again. He looked just as he had before, and he still beckoned me to follow him. This time I didn't hesitate. I followed him down the trail, and we eventually arrived at a small clearing. In the clearing was a group of hikers, all sitting around a campfire. They looked up as we approached, and I saw that they were all wearing old-fashioned hiking gear, like something out of the 1950s. The ghostly hiker walked up to the group and introduced me. He explained that these were some of his hiking buddies, and that they had all died on the trail many years ago, but they had never been able to leave the park. I was stunned by this revelation, but I also felt honored to be in the presence of these hikers. They told me stories about their adventures on the trail, and about the joys and challenges of hiking in the wilderness. As the night wore on, I felt like I was a part of their group. They welcomed me with open arms, and I felt like I had finally found a place where I belonged. But eventually, the night had to come to an end. The ghostly hiker led me back to the trailhead, and we said our goodbyes. I knew that I would never forget this experience, and that I had been given a gift that few people ever receive. Years later, when I was an old man, I returned to the park for one last visit. I made my way to the memorial site, and I sat down to rest. And then I heard the sound of shuffling footsteps once again. I turned around, and there was the ghostly hiker, just like I remembered him. He smiled at me, and I felt like he was telling me that it was time to go. I stood up and followed him down the trail, knowing that this time I would be joining him and his hiking buddies for good. But I also knew that I would never forget the lessons that I had learned from the ghostly hiker, and that his spirit would always be a part of the wilderness that he loved so much. I was just finishing up my routine patrols of the national park when I stumbled upon a sight that would forever change my life. It was a beautiful day. The sun was shining and the birds were singing their sweet melodies. As I walked along the trail, I heard a strange noise coming from the bushes. I stopped to investigate, and that's when I saw it. A giant bear, unlike any I had ever seen before. The bear was massive, easily standing over 10 feet tall, with fur as black as night. It was snarling and drooling, its eyes wild and crazed. I knew I needed to be careful, as this bear was clearly agitated and unpredictable. I tried to back away slowly, hoping that it wouldn't attack me, but it was too late. The bear charged at me with lightning-fast speed. I tried to reach for my pepper spray, but before I could even grab it, the bear had already knocked me to the ground. I braced myself for the worst, expecting to be mauled to death by this monster. But instead of biting me, the bear just stared into my eyes, almost as if it was studying me. Suddenly, I felt a strange energy coursing through my body. It was as if the bear had somehow transferred a part of its own essence into me. And then, just as quickly as it had charged at me, the bear disappeared into thin air. I was left lying on the ground, confused and terrified. I didn't know what had just happened, but I knew that something wasn't right. As I got up and dusted myself off, I could feel that something was different about me. It was as if a part of the bear had become a part of me. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. Everywhere I went, I felt a strange presence, as if I was being watched by something malevolent. And then, one night, I saw it. The bear, staring at me from the edge of the forest. But this time, it wasn't just a bear. It was something much more sinister. Its eyes were glowing with an otherworldly light, and its fur was now a sickly shade of green. And then, in a voice that wasn't quite a growl, but wasn't quite human either, it spoke to me. "Ranger," it said, "you have something that belongs to me. I demand that you return it, or suffer the consequences." I was terrified, but I knew that I couldn't just give in to this creature's demands. I had to figure out what was going on, and how to stop it. I spent hours researching ancient texts and speaking to experts in the paranormal field, trying to uncover any information I could about this creature. What I discovered was shocking. The bear wasn't just a bear. It was a demon, one that had been haunting the forests for centuries. It was said that the demon bear could possess any creature it chose, and that it was impossible to kill. Its only weakness was its attachment to its physical form, which could be severed by a powerful magical artifact. I knew what I had to do. I had to find that artifact and use it to defeat the demon bear once and for all. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was determined to succeed. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. I scoured the forest, searching for any trace of the artifact. I was exhausted and my body was weak, but I refused to give up. And finally, after what felt like an eternity, I found it. The artifact was a small amulet, inscribed with ancient symbols that glowed with a faint, pulsating light. I knew that this was it, the key to defeating the demon bear. I took a deep breath and put on the amulet, feeling a strange surge of power coursing through my veins. With the amulet in hand, I headed deep into the forest, determined to face the demon bear once and for all. As I walked, I could feel the presence of the demon bear growing stronger and stronger. Its energy was palpable, and I knew that I was getting closer. Finally, I saw it, the demon bear, standing at the edge of a clearing, its eyes glowing with an unholy light. I drew my pepper spray, ready to defend myself, but I knew that this wouldn't be enough to defeat the demon bear. "Give me back what is mine," the demon bear growled, its voice echoing through the forest. "I can't do that," I replied, standing my ground. "I need to stop you from hurting anyone else." The demon bear let out a deafening roar and charged at me with a ferocity that I had never seen before. I raised the amulet, and as the demon bear lunged at me, I plunged it into its chest. There was a blinding flash of light, and the demon bear let out a blood-curdling scream. Its body began to convulse and twist, as if it was being ripped apart from the inside out, and then with one final burst of energy, the demon bear disappeared, leaving behind only a pile of ash. I stood there, panting and sweating, holding the amulet in my hand. I had done it. I had defeated the demon bear. As I made my way back to civilization, I couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if I hadn't stumbled upon the demon bear that day. Would it still be haunting the forest, possessing innocent creatures and spreading chaos and destruction? But one thing was certain. I had faced my fears and come out victorious, and I knew that I would never forget the terror and excitement of that fateful encounter with the demon bear. I had been a park ranger for over a decade, and I thought I had seen it all, from bears wandering into campsites to hikers getting lost on remote trails. But nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to discover in the heart of the park. It all started when a group of campers reported strange noises coming from the lake. They claimed to have seen ghostly apparitions floating on the water's surface and heard the anguished cries of swimmers who had drowned years ago. At first, I thought it was just a case of overactive imaginations, but as more and more reports came in, I began to suspect that something truly sinister was at work. One day, I decided to investigate the lake myself. As I approached the water's edge, I could feel a chill run down my spine. There was an eerie stillness in the air, and I knew that I was treading on dangerous ground. I took a deep breath and plunged into the water, determined to get to the bottom of the lake's dark secrets. But as I swam deeper and deeper, I could feel a heavy weight pulling me down, as if something was trying to drown me. I fought back with all my strength, but it was no use. I was sinking fast, and I knew that I was about to join the ranks of the cursed swimmers who had met their untimely end in the lake. But then, something miraculous happened. A hand reached out from the murky depths and pulled me to safety. I looked up and saw the face of a young woman, a ghostly apparition who had drowned in the lake many years ago. "Leave this place," she whispered, her voice filled with sorrow and regret. "It is cursed, and those who swim in it are doomed to share our fate." With those words ringing in my ears, I swam back to shore, shaken and afraid. I knew that I had stumbled upon something beyond my understanding, a curse that had plagued the lake for generations and would continue to do so until someone found a way to break it. I spent the next few weeks researching the lake's history, and what I discovered was truly chilling. It seemed that the lake had been cursed by a group of Native American shamans who had been driven from their land by European settlers. In revenge, they had placed a curse on the lake, ensuring that anyone who swam in it would be haunted by the ghosts of drowned swimmers. But there was one hope, a talisman that the shamans had hidden deep in the forest, which had the power to break the curse and release the ghosts from their watery prison. I knew that I had to find the talisman, no matter what the cost. Armed with only my wits and a flashlight, I set out into the heart of the forest, determined to uncover the secrets that lay hidden there. For hours I searched through the undergrowth, my heart pounding with fear and anticipation. But just as I was about to give up hope, I saw a glint of light shining through the trees. I rushed towards it and found myself standing in a clearing, surrounded by the ghosts of the cursed swimmers. But this time, they were different. Their faces were filled with hope and joy, as if they knew that their long years of torment were finally at an end. And then, I saw it. The talisman, lying on the ground before me. I picked it up and felt a surge of power course through my veins. I knew that this was it, the key to breaking the curse and releasing the ghosts from their watery prison. With the talisman in hand, I raced back to the lake, feeling a sense of urgency. As I arrived at the lake, I could feel the weight of the curse pressing down on me, but I steeled myself, knowing that I had to be strong if I was going to break the curse and release the ghosts from their watery prison. With a deep breath, I raised the talisman and spoke the words of the ancient spell that would break the curse. At first, nothing happened, but then there was a sudden rush of wind, and the surface of the lake began to churn and boil. I watched in awe as the ghosts of the cursed swimmers rose from the water, their faces filled with joy and gratitude. They thanked me for breaking the curse and setting them free, and then they vanished into the ether, leaving behind only the still waters of the lake. From that day on, the lake was never cursed again, and the park became a place of peace and tranquility. I continued to work as a park ranger for many years, but I never forgot the lessons that I learned at the cursed lake. I learned that sometimes the things we fear the most are the things that we must face head-on in order to break free from the shackles that bind us. And I learned that even the darkest curses can be broken if we are brave enough to stand up to them and fight for what is right. As I look back on that fateful day at the cursed lake, I am filled with a sense of pride and accomplishment. I know that I played a small part in breaking the curse and freeing the ghosts from their watery prison, and that is something that I will always be proud of.